Okay,
Hey, you know
and
what?
I
Can I
oh,
can
go
I say
ahead.
something?
Well, it's your
Oh,
show.
thank you.
I'll take it back in a minute.
I'll mention this to you because I got this book a little while back, and I've been moving things around the office, and I just got it here because I'm trying to put it someplace here in the office, not the library. It's called The Schedule Book: 4 Decades of Network Programming from Sign On to Sign Off.
Oh,
And this came out, I mean, it
oh,
looks like it's from the early 80s, but, for a lot of reasons outside of wrestling, I wanted it, but also specifically, you hear so much about the prominence of wrestling on early network TV, and although this is not a definitive book, I guess, it has a lot of the listings here, and, I find this really interesting, actually, just to see what was on, but how much wrestling was on at different times.
Have you compiled a list of the various wrestling programs as of yet, or are you about to delve into this?
I haven't really gone through it yet. It's been one of those future projects I want to do, but like if I look here, Winter 1951 evening on the Dumont Network from 9 to 11 was Wrestling from Columbia Park with Dennis James. That's a 2-hour block. And then, did anyone else have wrestling in prime time at that point? The Paul Winchell Show was here. Not there. And then that's Monday night. So if I go to Tuesday night, roller derbies on ABC from 10 to 11, not wrestling, but a lot of people always think of roller derby and wrestling
Yes.
together. And then on Wednesday on ABC from 9:30 to 12, wrestling from the Rainbow in Chicago. Wow, that's 2.5 hours.
And this is this is Eastern time listings, right?
I believe so, correct.
Then that would have been 8:30 to 11. So they were telecasting pretty much the whole card from Chicago.
And then on Thursday, on Dumont, was Boxing from Eastern Parkway with Dennis James. I bring that up because Dennis James was the same commentator. And, you bring up who the stars are, and sometimes you see this in the listings now, but a lot of the times back then, even though you had Gorgeous George and Rocca and Vern Gagne and Luthez, it was actually the commentator who got star listing on a lot of these shows.
Yeah. And it also, the way that that television worked in the early 50s, a lot of the major markets had even more wrestling programs than were on network. And some of the smaller markets had to, that's why some of those sprouted up early, had to make their own. I'll give you an example for what I've been working on here lately. Knoxville, Tennessee didn't get television until 1953. And I think Nashville was 1950. I'm talking television stations, not television wrestling. And then even in Louisville here, until the year I was born, 1961, there were 2 television stations. So some of the smaller markets ended up, the TV stations picked and chose what network programs. They were affiliated with more than one network. They picked and chose the shows that they wanted to carry because there were 3 networks, but only 1 or 2 stations in a market. They had to split programs up. And sometimes they would rerun the less popular network stuff. They'd do the kinescope thing, and they wouldn't rerun it, but they'd run it on a weekend or a delayed time or whatever. But a lot of programs didn't get, a lot of network programs didn't get carried in the smaller markets at all for the first half of the 50s. But wrestling was Chicago and Los Angeles and the major markets that had multiple TV stations. If you look through some of your Wrestling As You Like It's, which you have many times, in Chicago, there was some kind of wrestling on 5 nights a week on television. So it just depended on where the outlets were.
And even here, obviously, there are different gaps in the schedule for local programming. We're talking about just what was on the national network. And again, we did Monday and Wednesday, and then Thursday was the boxing, and then on Saturday, on Dumont, I don't know what exactly this show is, from 8:30 to 11, it's Saturday night at Madison Square Garden. Not saying that's wrestling, it could be just anything, I don't know.
Yeah.
And then after that, from 11 to 1 a.m., wrestling from the Marigold in Chicago. So there was wrestling there. And again, this is not counting local television. This is just what's on national. That's 3 different wrestling shows. The first one, Wrestling from Columbia Park, is a 2-hour show. The second one was Wrestling from the Rainbow. That's a 2.5. No, that was also 2 hours, excuse me. And then this one here was also 2 hours. So they had a lot of time. Again, that's not counting all the shows you've heard of before from Washington, D.C. or Texas Wrestling, which was a syndicated show, and Wrestling from Hollywood. And, the Northeast, there were so many different television shows at different times. They taped it in the studio on the West Side that used to be the Sony Studios. So.
Well, and goddamn it, where did I just see this? Because we've looked at the Wilbur Snyder book. This is a little bit before his era, but Scott Teal, crowbarpress.com, also sent us the new book on Ed Don George, but I've been flipping through things. But there was a schedule that I saw. Los Angeles had wrestling on television, I believe, in either 1946 or 47. I think it was 46. Especially with, obviously kind of the center of television being New York and Los Angeles and pretty much nothing else in those days. But the station it was on, they showed the schedule, and it was like from midnight to fucking 4 p.m. the next day, test pattern. And then they'd come on with some kind of block of local program wrestling and then sign off, or news and then sign off, or whatever. The state that nobody had a television. The station was only on like 4 or 5 hours a day.
See, that's what fascinates me.
Wrestling was one night of the week in Los Angeles of it.
That no one had a TV. This is fall 1947 evening. And on Thursdays on Dumont, from 9 to 11 was Wrestling from Jerome Stadium. And then the next night, from 9 to 11 was Wrestling from Jamaica Arena. So that's a New York. That's Jamaica, Queens.
Yeah.
And then there was Sports from Madison Square Garden on CBS. Sports from Madison Square Garden was on CBS as listed here on Wednesday from 8:30 to 11. On Thursday, same time spot. On Friday, on Saturday, and on Sunday. It was a lot of sports. I mean, there was almost nothing on the schedule. Here's what's on the schedule. Small Fry Club, Doorway to Frame, Showcase, Swing into Sports, the Gillette Cavalcade of Stars, and NBC News.
Gillette Cavalcade of Stars lasted a while into the actual, early 50s era, and it was a big-time show.
Well, there it is. I'll go through this a little further in the future so we could do a concerted segment on it, but...
Well, and you know what? I don't even know if I mentioned this to you, but I had known, and again, Scott Teal, crowbarpress.com, his books are great for research, but we had known previously from Mark James at MemphisWrestlingHistory.com, his books that in Memphis, WMC Channel 5, that was the station that Jarrett went to in 1977, that all the modern Memphis tapes are from. WMC Channel 5 is the NBC affiliate in Memphis, and it was the first station in the market in the end of December 1948. They went on the air, and it was then known WMCT were the call letters, and I think they were on a different channel number than Channel 5 when they went on the air, and they had to switch over because of interference with Channel 4 out of Nashville. But nevertheless, I knew that they had telecast in the early 50s at least some Ellis Auditorium matches from Les Wolf's promotion before it became a Goulas Welch town. But apparently that led me to chasing some histories of Channel 5 on Wikipedia and et cetera, et cetera. The Ellis Auditorium apparently was across the street from the original location of WMC television, and they actually did go over and telecast the live matches as early as when they signed on, or shortly out, like in 1949, because they were able to run the cables across the fucking street. They had no, they had no remote truck or no whatever, but they were able to extension cords and audio cables and the camera cable. They could reach from the building across the street into the back of the Ellis Auditorium, and they had the actual cards on television for some short period of time. But that obviously none of that exists. I can't even imagine it was ever recorded on anything. They just broadcast it. But that's the first time I've ever heard of doing a remote by actually being able to fucking run an extension cord from the station.
That's pretty crazy. You know, there should be like a compilation. I don't know who would buy this book. You and I would. But just of all the different TV stations and radio stations, too, when they aired wrestling from like the 30s up through the 60s. I'm fascinated by that kind of stuff. You know, I bring up radio. That's why I go to 30s, just because it was on radio or there was some sort of radio coverage, or even if it was a local weekly segment. Before TV, that was all you had. That and programs and newspapers.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this has been a drive-thru. Well, let's end on a good note. This has been the drive-thru.
Okay, we'll see you later.
We'll see you on The Experience in a few days. And, of course, next week on the drive-thru for Jim Cornette, I'm the great Brian Last. Nice try.
Shit, I was about to hang up if you'd have gone one more.
Well, you can't. We haven't talked about Cornette's collectibles. You can't have.
All right. Well, you know what? As a matter of fact, I will have you know that, hold on, I got my notes here. The first 200 orders from the mayhem that happened when we went on sale on May the 3rd will be handed off to Hotchkiss Featherbottom this coming weekend, which is, as we sit here, May 17th and 18th. He'll be slapping labels on them, and they'll be flying through the U.S. Postal Service, and more are to follow the following week. So we have this assembly line set up going. And if you want to get in on the action for anything that may be left and all the regular type of things, and attractive merchandise it is at an affordable price, JimCornette.com. But we're going to be caught up in 2 weeks, I bet you. Boy, howdy.